The 2026 tennis season has already started, so this feels like the perfect time to do a tennis betting tutorial. Last season was our most profitable ever with 14% ROI on WTA, and this season I plan on being even more aggressive. Let me start with this because it matters. We calculate chance, and we only bet when the odds are in our favour. In this video, I'll walk you through the core metrics actually needed, and I'll also share the factors that helped me jump from 7 to 14% ROI last season. If you're looking to find your own bets, build a prediction module, or even incorporate AI into your daily betting, this video is for you. I'm Tony from Bet Analyst, a full-time professional gambler. Let's crack on. Let me tell you why I would recommend tennis betting to anybody that wants to become an originator, somebody who finds their own bets. Accurate data is easy to find, and for the most part it's available for free. There's a small player pool of around 200 players on both the ATP and WTA main tour. This makes it much easier to get an understanding of a player's profile. There's also excellent picture coverage with loads of replays, so you can get a good fix on what is happening. I would also suggest for those guys that are doing sports modeling, this is the ideal sport because it's relatively easy to build a sports module based on the data you can collect. And on a quick side note, I actually find WTA more profitable, and I'll go through that a little bit later, but these 10 points I'm about to cover apply to both the WTA and ATP. Now the first metric, and the obvious one, is form. But a lot of people get this wrong. It's not just about the win-loss record. You've got to do more than that. You've got to go through expectancy. Now the best way to judge expectancy is to look through the odds. You can go through actually the archives odds by using a platform, something like Odds Portal, going to the betting tools there, archived odds, put in your player and actually seeing how they performed over the past year. Now just one key warning. Recent form is often overrated by sportsbooks and bettors alike, so recent form is worth less than it should be, so just bear that in mind. And number two is rankings are not necessarily the best reflection on a player's ability. Now you've got to hear me out on this one. Let's go back in time. Let's think about Karolina Pliskova. She was number one for a couple of years on the WTA tour, but she never won a Grand Slam. What she was particularly good in is she kept a busy program, she played a lot of tournaments, and she won a lot of the sort of 250s, 500s, and even 1000 tournaments. But when it came down to the big ones, she wasn't good enough. So a lot of the times, rankings are wrong, and I would rather you perform a rating system. Now you're going to have to go through an individual player's profile and actually dissect it. You're going to be looking at how many matches they played. If you're looking at the likes of Karolina Muchova and Marketa Vondrousova, you can see they were not able to play a lot of matches over the last couple of seasons. So the actual ranking that they've got should be much higher in a rating system. You know, on the other side of the spectrum, there's those players that can actually turn up each week, keep a massive schedule. We're not talking about the ones that are doing like 15 tournaments a year. We weren't talking about those that can turn up at like 40. Say Magdalena Fresh would be one. Victoria Tomova would be another player that's probably got an exaggerated rating based on the fact that she can actually play a lot of matches. So form a rating system as opposed to a ranking system. That would be my ideal situation. That's what I would suggest that you focus on. Number three is surface matter. If you do a proper evaluation, you will see the likes of Swiatek, Paolini and Kasatkina are particularly good on clay, whereas the likes of Sabalenka, Rybakina and maybe even somebody like Danielle Collins are more efficient on an hard court surface. And the reason for that is they are early ball strikers. They take the ball early and they don't expect to sort of slug it out. But remember, not all courts are created equal. So for example, on the clay surface, Stuttgart and Madrid are known as being very fast courts. On the other hand, Rome and Bucharest are slow. If you want an example for hard court, Indian Wells and Miami, they're slow. Dubai and Cincinnati are very fast. Now Cincinnati is a little bit of a different situation. It's not about the court itself, it's actually about the actual playing conditions. The Wimbledon grass is slower than Queens, which is in the same city, so that's when you can actually see the surface itself is playing different. You should also factor in the weather, the ball type, the altitude, and whether there's any change in circumstances. The number 4 is the matchups and the actual head-to-head. Now, if you stop and think about it, this could be a significant factor, or it could mean nothing. If a player had won actually 5 past meetings against another player, but now the surface was different, that's something we're going to have to dig into a little bit. And you're also going to have to take on board the recency. You know, if these matches took place when they were both playing on the ITF tour, or when they were teenagers, and now things have developed over the years, then that is obviously going to be a bit of a changer. That's the actual evolution, you know, as a player improved or declined since actually the last match. You know, what's the ratings or rankings at this moment in time. You've got to look at the nature of the wins, whether they were tight sets, whether they won relatively straightforward, had no issues, took control of the game. This is where really the detail creates the edge. So take on board everything when you're looking at the actual head-to-head, not just the numbers. You've got to look at the bigger picture. Number 5 is a player's well-being. Now, you can read into this in a few different ways. For example, if a player is obviously suffering from injuries, they're not going to be at their best, you know, so watch their body language on the court, see how they're moving around. There could also be the sort of scenario later in the season, especially where some kind of fatigue comes into play, you know, if they're having to travel long distances. I would suggest that you learn to look into the sort of last 10 to 14 days of a player's activity. Consider the turnaround time, whether there are any tough matches in the previous round. And in this instance, what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to actually look at a player's mental resilience and, you know, their physical resilience. Are they good when they are actually up against it? Now, number 6 is one of my favourites, and that is the motivation factor. Just imagine to yourself, everybody's turning up at Grand Slam, massive points up for grabs, the big prize money, everybody's going to be putting it all in. At the end of the day, if you win a first round match at a Grand Slam, you win exactly the same money as if you actually go on to win a tournament at 250 level. So, in this instance, top players are turning up at these lower grade tournaments. What are they there for? Are they there for appearance money? Are they doing it for the sponsorship? Are they doing it to sort of show their presence? Or is it just fitting into their schedule? One thing is certain, if you've got a top 10 player turning up at a 250, they're not going to be trying very hard. They're not going to be putting it all on the line. They've got bigger fish to fry. This tournament for them is just a way of filling in the time. But what you're trying to do with the motivation factor is try to figure out, you know, which players are going to be giving it all, because for some, these small tournaments are going to be great opportunities and they're going to be putting their best foot forward, and this is where you can get great betting value. And number 7 is a tournament location. It is a factor, so we're going to have to take it on board. Now, think to yourself that actually home players win 2 to 3% more matches than those who are actually coming from different countries, right? So that's not a big difference. But in some instances, like with Australians, with Americans, and particularly with the likes of Jessica Pegula, which actually has about 10% better performances before the US crowds, they do perform better when they are playing in front of their own fans, right? So bear this in mind, because it is a bit of a factor, and often though it is overrated, because a lot of the own players feel under extra pressure and they don't always adhere to it. You know, they don't always find that extra to actually be crowd pleasers. And number 8 is tournament history. You know, it's that saying, isn't it? Horses for courses. Some players do particularly well at certain venues year in, year out. So take on board, you know, what's happening at that tournament. What happened the year before? What happened even a few years down the line? You know, what is a player's performance been like at that particular tournament? If they have had a good record there, if they are protecting points, then obviously they're going to be set up ready for that particular tournament. That might make them want to skip the tournament before. It might make them play a lesser level before, and that could create you actually fantastic odds, right? There's a lot to be said for the actual tournament history, but you've also got to take on board a few other things. Who did they beat? Did they have a particularly easy run last season? You know, things could have happened like player withdrawals or injuries to others, or they could have just met lower graded players, and that would have made life easier for them. So, there's a little bit more to it than just looking actually at the past performance. You've got to consider also maybe the fatigue, maybe evolution as a player improved since then. If used properly though, this can be a massive edge. Now number 9 is, and this is just a personal observation, this is something that works particularly well for me, is a focus on WTA as opposed to ATP, because the opportunities are much bigger. Now I made a lot more money over the years than the average person on tennis, purely because I do focus on WTA. What I actually like about WTA is the momentum swings. You can see one player win a first set 6-0 and get stuffed in the next set by exactly the same scoreline, right? The ladies, for some reason or the other, they don't have that sort of psychological sternness to see things through. I'm not saying this is necessarily true of all of them, but they do have these frailties, and I think that can be taken advantage of. They are well known for being a little bit more sort of streaky, and you see a lot of favourites overturned. If you're looking for massive value, and that is in these inflated odds, then you're going to have to really put a big focus in on WTA, because that's where great opportunities exist. And number 10 is just really a tip from me. I would suggest that you learn to put players in baskets, put them in groups, put them under some type of heading. What are they? What type of player are they, should I say? So let me just go through a few examples of what I mean. You've got the grinders, we could also call them counter punchers if you like, players that will keep chasing the ball down there as game as a pebble. You could have the aggressive baseliners who sort of sit deep, won't leave that baseline for anything. Then of course you've got the big servers, the first strike players. Obviously you've got your all-court players who can literally adapt to any sort of surface. You've got your shot makers, the ones who like to take it on. They come probably with a little bit of an eye of risk in terms of that they're always going to go for the shot, and that's why they could find themselves on the sort of end of being caught out. You've got the power hitters who are going to just stand there and they're going to really sort of pump it out, like the Sabalenkas and so on. And then you've got the simple pushers and retrievers, but they do make it hard for players, they do make it hard for opponents, and some of the big power hitters, they do tend to struggle against these pushers and retrievers. Resources that can help you with their data is like tennislive.net. You get all the player profiles here. There's more to it than actually meets the eye. It looks a pretty cheap website, but there's a lot of detail actually in there, so check out tennislive.net. You've got livetennis.eu. This is where you're going to get all the live rankings. So as actually a tournament progresses, you get the live rankings. You see where they're at, and what points they need to save and what they're going to get for the next round and so on. The tennis channel, now obviously this is more American based, but you can always get a VPN and you can watch a lot of matches on there. You've also got the websites, the ATP and the WTA websites, where you can watch your replays. I would also suggest that you use social media. This is a great way to keep up to date with what's happening with players. And I would also I'm big on this, is that if you get the opportunity, go to tournaments. This is a great way to actually see what's happening first. And as for the promise, how I actually increased my ROI last season, it was very simple. I focused heavily on the first 2 rounds. In fact, I did about 70% of my turnover on the first 2 rounds. And if you watch this video closely, you can see a lot of the metrics that I used to actually get ahead, to actually get that better fix than the actual sports books themselves. So I also refused odd slippage. So if the price was 2, I would only take the 2. I wouldn't take then the reduced price afterwards of like a 1.97. I would only take the higher price. This year I'm going to do slightly different. I'm probably be shooting for like a 10% ROI, but I'm going to probably go for like 3 times the amount of bets. So you do sacrifice one for the other. And I will say to you that you're going to find a lot of opportunities in the sort of lower grade 250 tournaments. So put a strong focus on them, because the sports books are not particularly good at pricing, and the line is relatively weak in terms of that it moves the odds quite quickly when money goes down. So you do get, if you're of a different opinion, you do get a massive advantage. And the final thing that I really like to say is be flexible, not rigid. Watch matches, get a feeling for the game, stay informed, and just really try to immerse yourself into the business of professional sports betting, particularly tennis in this instance. And then where you take it after that, you can use it as leverage to get to the next stage, and I'm sure then you can be very successful. But that's it from me for now. I hope you did enjoy this video. Don't forget, if you did, give us a thumbs up, give us a like, give us a comment, ask us questions if you've got anything sensible to say. But other than that, we'll see you in the next one soon. Take care for now. Bye bye.